Welcome back to The Rundown, one of the top business podcasts in the world. In today's episode, we are talking to the CFO of Figma, Praveer Melwani. Praveer has been at Figma for over 8 years now. He took over as CFO back in 2022, and since then, he's guided the company through a failed acquisition from Adobe and also the blockbuster IPO this summer. So in today's conversation, we got into what it's like taking a company public and seeing its stock price double on the first day. We also talked about where Figma sees growth ahead and how they plan to monetize AI, and also what it's like to collect a $1 billion breakup fee. This was an awesome and wide-ranging conversation with Praveer. We even talked a little NBA, so let's get into it. All right, Praveer Melwani, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Yeah, really good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Of course. What's life like been? What's life like as a CFO of a publicly traded company? You know, Figma went public over the summer. Have you gotten used to like the day-to-day changes compared to being a private company?
You know, that first few days there are a little bit of a roller coaster, but then, once you settle in post that first earnings call, I think things get back to normal a little bit. So right now, par for the course for us, deep into 26 planning, very excited about a bunch of the stuff that we've got coming out. So, yeah, life's good.
That's awesome. I want to go back to the summer a little bit because it was a wild week to say the least. Um, as the CFO, you're obviously, a big part of that process, taking the company public. What was one part of the process that was like the most surprising to you?
I mean,
You
that
can give
day,
me
that
more than one. That's fine.
There's just a whole bunch of stuff that needs to happen over the course of a short time period there, and one of the things that was really surprising to me was how much our team was able to accomplish, and just make a reality. And you kind of hope and pray that it all works out, and seeing it all come together was really special. And then obviously that first day we did not anticipate the stock to do what it did, but we're here for it. We recognize that it's a moment in time metric, and we're very much focused on the inputs over the long term.
Can we talk about that first day? Because obviously that's like what everyone talked about. The stock IPO'd at $33, and then it jumps up to over $100 in the first day. People were writing like essays on Twitter about how the IPO process is broken. What do you feel about that? Because do you feel like that the process might be a little bit broken, that it favors bankers versus Figma? Maybe you guys left too much money on the table.
No, I mean, look, I mean, basically the majority of the transaction was secondary. So the Figma balance sheet didn't necessarily move too much, other than the synthetic secondary that we raised to pay down the tax bill on the RSUs that came due. So from our perspective, it was the function of a whole bunch of interest in the stock and a pretty constrained float. And so we get excited to continue to educate the public on our story and narrative. I think that's going to take some time to bake, and that's kind of exactly what we told our employees is like we have to kind of keep heads down and keep building, because it's the stock market is more of a weighing machine than a short-term voting machine that we saw that day.
Yeah, but I mean, that's true, and that's a very good answer. But I'm also thinking like, imagine being an employee there that first week. You're probably like, oh, what's going on here? It's got to be like that roller coaster of the ups and downs. Like that's got to be nuts.
Yeah, I can only imagine. Well, I mean, I lived through it, so definitely felt it. But again, there's only so many things that we can control. Shipping great product, listening to our customers, and that's kind of where our focus is today.
But now being a publicly traded company, I mean, you do have quarterly earnings to worry about now, investors to worry about. Do you think that puts extra pressure on the company though to maybe focus more on chasing margins versus innovation or shipping certain kinds of products? Like how do you keep that startup DNA while also keeping the investors in mind?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we were able to do over the course of not just through the IPO process, but for, years now is, those long only investors, the folks that are going to be around the business for extended periods of time. We want them to understand how we think, how we make decisions, and be along for this ride, for not just what's happening in any one particular quarter, but what's going to happen, years from now. And that was an important thing for us as we went through that, and we were selecting folks that were going to be part of the syndicate, or rather that were going to be allocated shares. And we wanted to be aligned there, that there are going to be moments in time where we're going to need to invest in the short term and for the benefit of the long. And we're in one of those cycles today with our investments. From with many of our AI investments, and that's going to potentially create a headwind on our gross margin side. But if we do our job right, that means that there's more usage, more utilization on platform, and more people are building, the products of the future on Figma, and that, over time will translate to dollars for the business. But in the short term, that may mean that we're, eating some of the additional costs there.
I want to talk about some interesting things that I learned, just studying the company. What was surprising to me the most was that 85% of Figma's users are outside of the US. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah.
And that accounts for what, around 50% of the revenue?
Yeah. Yeah.
So do you see like the international market as like the growth engine to kind of close that gap between users and revenue?
It's been a consistent trend for us for some time. I've been at the business now for about 8 years, and when I first joined, about 80% of our weekly active users, or I think just actives in general, were outside of the States, and that's climbed to 85 today. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely room for us to continue to localize and meet our customers where they're at. I mean, even as recently as this past week, we localized the product in French and German, and we're kind of going across, a whole host of marketing activities across the world. And we've opened up offices in all across Europe, in places like Paris, London, and Berlin, in different parts of APAC, and Singapore, Tokyo, Sydney, and we're looking to continue to expand that in the near future here. And in large part, it is because design it's a global phenomenon. The way in which people are interacting with brands more often than not is digitally, and that's not something that is only going to be felt here in the U.S., but candidly, it's felt by folks across the world, across all sorts of industries.
Yeah, I mean, just my personal experience. I remember just trying Figma for the first time. A buddy put me onto it, sent me a link, and I'm like, we can work together at the same time. Like it was like a flashbulb moment. I'm like, this is like Google Docs, but
Yeah.
like for design, and it was just so cool. And then it's cool to see that like people all over the world resonate with that.
Totally, and it's kind of what we all come to expect, though, right? It's this really rapid way of working. It's this multiplayer collaboration that we've grown up on, and I think that's what Dylan and Evans, what they stumbled on when they started Figma, is that they're just a unique way that felt a little bit different at the time to how designers were going to come and work together, not just amongst themselves, but with the broader set of folks that are going to interact with the product development process, your PMs, your marketers, your engineers. And design truly has a seat at the table at this point. It's the key set of interfaces that are going to be the front door to your customers, and that's got to be really thoughtfully curated, and it's what's going to then create those points of differentiation that allow you to win.
I think Praveer, people don't realize like before a tool like Figma, it was a pain having to like save a design file, right? And then like have it to like email it to somebody. They look at it, they make changes, they send it back to you with like V3, and then you're on V26, and it was a pain. This was a game-changing tool.
Yeah, yeah, no, I mean, I think it's also just the start for where we're going in the future. We, earlier this year doubled our product portfolio. We rolled out, four new products. One called Figma Buzz, which is a purpose-built surface area for marketers and brand designers. We rolled out a product called Sites, which allows you to go single click to publish, and you then have a static site that you can then ship. And we'll host on your behalf. We rolled out a product called Figma Make, which allows you to prompt your way into an actual application right out of the gate. And then there's a product called Figma Draw, which is an elevated way for you to an elevated vector drawing tool for folks that are really, really focused on craft and want to have the ability to go deeper within the product as well.
I'm all about those mind maps. That's what I use Figma for mostly. It's awesome. Or the whiteboard stuff. It's awesome. Are you sick of talking about AI yet, or is that still like, are you still loving it? Because I feel like every conversation has to be about AI.
Well, it's almost like this platform layer. It's just part of who we are and and how many companies build now. So, that I totally appreciate and understand the sentiment and the excitement around it. For us, it is just the way that we all expect our products to be built in this kind of new age and new future.
I mean, I think the words that I saw being thrown around was like Figma is a AI first design platform. But what I always think about whenever I hear that is like, how do you monetize it, right? I think that's still something that is unclear for a lot of investors. Like, how do you see Figma maximizing, maximizing the monetization of AI somewhere down the line?
Yeah, I think right now we're still focused on finding use cases and workflows that are really resonating with our end users. And as we continue to identify what are the hero workflows and really drive incremental improvement to those, we'll be able to figure out the monetization piece thereafter. But you're entirely right in that, the questions around monetization are, rising because there are elevated costs to running these new models, new products, and it's not lost on us that that's true. And I think there's going to be a way where we could marry both embedded usage on our existing seat types, while also then a consumption model that we can overlay on top that allows power users, folks who are getting extreme amounts of value from the platform, to be able to do so, and then we as Figma can share in some of that value along the way. But I think, for us, it's right now about growth. It's driving ubiquity of our new solutions, and we very much believe that, that is the path to then the future monetization that we all are excited about.
Was the partnership with OpenAI? I think it was announced a couple weeks ago, where you can use Figma within ChatGPT. I haven't tried it myself, but I'm excited to try that. Why was it important for Figma to be a part of the ChatGPT ecosystem? Are you seeing that as something to be a revenue generator, or more of a pipeline for for new users?
Yeah, I think we'll see. I mean, right now, they've got what, 800 million
Yeah.
weekly active users or something. So you want to be where folks are. And I think, as people are discovering tools in different ways, starting in ChatGPT is going to be an interesting way for our users to find Figma in the future. And, the way that that integration works today is if you're describing a diagram or a workflow or mind map, it sounds like you do that in FigJam already
Yeah.
today. You could start that in the context of a chat with ChatGPT, and we'll render those for you in line. And should you then want the ability to go and save it down, make edits or changes, you can click through and open up a FigJam file directly within the ChatGPT interface. There's obviously different ways that we can think about evolving that. Today, it's primarily surrounding an open with partnership where you can then land in FigJam. But you can imagine a world where maybe you want to be able to start a Figma Slides journey within the context of a chat application, or maybe it's you're actually going and describing an application you'd like to create, and we render a Figma make there for you, which you can then go and take in the next sort of leg there. And I think there's going to be an interesting way for us to play with different sort of chat providers over time. I think it's going to be an interesting journey for us to figure out how we continue to optimize this. But when they come knocking, and there's just so many users there, we want to make sure that we're meeting the opportunity with haste.
Are you worried at all that these tools might be getting a little too good? Like Nano Banana, when that came out a couple months ago at this point, it's like, man, this is starting to get really, really good to where maybe it turns into a competitor of Figma.
Yeah, for us, what we've been focused on is we think that we are, the system of record for folks that are building any sort of digital product or experience, and that's not necessarily one part of that's not it's not it doesn't necessarily take just one tool, one prompt in order to get there. You really have to be able to serve every part from ideation all the way through build, and so there's a whole set of workflows that have to happen along the way where you have to build alignment with your team members. You then want to be able to actually visualize it and potentially visualize it in multiple different ways, test it, prototype it, be able to hand it off to a developer who actually can then go build it. Or in some cases, we can work with whatever new age agentic IDE that you're already living within, and through an MCP server that we've created, pull in the design context that can live side by side with you in VS Code or Cursor or Windsurf right away. And so I think that what we very much believe in this new world, that there's going to be more software, not less. AI is definitely going to help that to happen, but it's well crafted, well designed pieces of software that have already had the muscle of internal alignment already built through it. That are going to be the pieces of software that win, and we think that we can be that platform, that system of record that supports that over time.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I don't think that these tools are like people are going to need something on top of just these tools. I mean, I've stopped using Photoshop. I know it's a bad word for you guys, but I've stopped using Photoshop in exchange for some of these AI tools. But like Figma is it's hard to replace everything you guys do. Um, but sticking with the AI line of questioning, when you hear the term bubble and circular financing, uh, does that do you roll your eyes at that, or do you take it seriously and just kind of like monitor the situation? I'm kind of curious to see, as someone in your position, like how do you approach that?
Yeah, I mean, right now I'm squarely focused on, what can we build, what can we control, and what are our customers asking for? And I think, what we're finding is our customers are looking for new ways that they can build more efficiently, and be more productive with the set of resources that they can. And they're looking to us at times for inspiration on how to do that. And so, now that we have so many more different experiences that we can take to them, it's actually pretty compelling platform pitch that we take back to them over time. And I know, over what we're attempting to do even more so on the go-to-market side is take a little bit more of a solutions-oriented, consultative sales approach to that process, to be able to take the learnings of, some of our early customers who are actually deploying, a set of our AI solutions end to end, and be able to replicate that in different ways. And so, I think that, many customers many companies are still searching to understand exactly how their workflows will change. And we at Figma too are feeling that today. So I don't, by no means do I feel like folks have figured it out completely, but there's definitely a willingness to experiment, to learn, and try things differently, as more opportunities present themselves.
And right now the markets are encouraging that, right? That probably helps too, where people are like, investors are looking for, uh, companies trying solutions for AI and some sort of business model around it.
Yeah, and it's not. I mean, for us, even as we just going through our 26 planning, it's very much embedded in the way in which that we're talking about planning. So you lay out your headcount proposal, your org chart, and as I'm sitting down with each leader across the company, and with Dylan, our CEO, we're not just saying, okay, well, what X number of people need required to do Y job. It's like, hey, do you have the right system? Do you have the right process? Are you using the right tools in order to make it happen? And I think it's harder today to say, hey, I need an additional person to go and do this task. You have to actually prove that you've tried the other sets of solves before we go and add an incremental person over time.
So not only is it like a solution that you guys sell, but you're also looking at AI tools internally to help improve productivity and cut down costs.
Yeah, I mean, the ways in which people are working are changing, and I think, if you're closed off to that, that could potentially leave you behind. And I think, as someone who has to be a steward of, Figma's capital, I want to make sure that we're putting it in the right places, and we're creating opportunities for us to be efficient over time.
Awesome, awesome. Going back to zooming out a little bit and going back to like Figma overall as a business, um, what do you think about like the TAM? Obviously design is everything now. What are the upcoming areas that you see as like the highest areas of growth right now moving forward?
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, when we were going through the go public process, we identified a TAM of about $33 billion. And we started there by saying, okay, well, what are the personas that are in and around the product development process that we can serve with the tools that we've created? And that's already changing. About two-thirds of our users today are non-designers. About a third of our users are designers. And then, the about 30% are developers. So we sit today with about a 1-to-1 split between designers and developers on platform. But we know that there's way more developers out there in the world to every one designer. And right now we're very much focused on, through products like Dev Mode, through our MCP server, where we can meet folks exactly in the tools that they're operating. How can we do a better job of serving a wider range of, that developer suite? You then take a product like Figma Make, where, in a prior life, a PM would need to work with a designer and developer as their hands, to say, hey, take this idea that I have and let's prototype something. But in the context of Figma Make, what we're seeing is, folks are being able to save time. What would have taken, a couple weeks or weeks could actually be now done in days, and that PM can actually go and express their ideas in new ways. And our focus right now is very much going deep within the existing customers that we have and showcasing to them, there's a much broader set of things that we can solve for them. And as roles continue to blur between a PM, a designer, a developer, and all sorts of folks, we think that we can be that tool of ubiquity that brings them all together. In the same way that Excel is not just a tool that's used by finance professionals or accountants. It's anyone who's trying to make a list or manage the household budget. We think that there's going to be use cases with Figma where you're going to want to be able to communicate visually, design an experience, craft a UI, and that's just going to be part of the visual language that we all are going to want to communicate around.
I mean, you bring up the Excel point. I've seen people use Excel in the most insanely creative ways. It's crazy. So I can see what if people can do that with Figma, like the TAM is just astronomical.
You should definitely
Um,
play around or take a look at some of the community plugins and community files that people have built. And we actually even ran like a make hackathon recently where we said, okay, anyone and everyone has the ability to go and create something in Figma, and we'll come back and say, okay, what are some unique things that people have put together that were handwritten poems that people were a handwritten poem creator that someone built. There was, a whole variety of games that people were able to create.
Games.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the Figma platform is extremely powerful, and I think the more that folks are able to visualize and see what they can do, it's pretty creative what people are able to come up with.
Yeah, I'm a noob. I'm using it for just basic stuff, but now I'm inspired to try like utilizing it for other stuff. I'm gonna check it out for sure. I want to ask a quick question about the M&A. You guys announced Figma announced that M&A is going to be a critical part of the growth strategy, and I think there was a couple of big acquisitions recently. Modify, which is a vector graphic startup, and Payload, which is a content management system. Just curious to get your take on how you guys approach M&A. If there's like a checklist of certain things you guys want to see before you approach a company for acquisition.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's got to be a variety of things that are true for us. One, it's got to be a fantastic team, fantastic product, like that's kind of and fantastic business. That's kind of like a no-brainer. Two, they've got to be culturally additive for us in some way, or there's got to be some alignment so that we're not going to have organ rejection when push comes to shove there. And then three, it's got to be something that can be a top priority for us. It doesn't necessarily need to have been the top priority, but it's got to be one of the top priorities of our team moving forward in order to ensure its success. And if those criteria aren't met, then we got to think a little bit harder about is this the right thing for the business to do at this time? Because the anecdotes is most M&A actually doesn't necessarily work out the way that you had originally planned. And so I'd say that we're learning on that right now. We're making sure that we've built the teams and the infrastructure to be able to digest stuff in a more thoughtful way. But I think it's an interesting time to be in the position we are, because there are a bunch of really interesting businesses that are catching flight, and we want to make sure that if there's an opportunity for us to capture lightning in the bottle in some way, or leverage the large scale distribution motion that we have. About 95% of the Fortune 500 are using the platform already today. We should do that. And I think we benefit from a strong balance sheet, from the core fundamentals of our business that give us the flexibility to do this, and we don't take that lightly.
Speaking of the strong balance sheet, I have to ask. So I was creeping on your LinkedIn to prepare for this interview, and I saw that you became CFO of Figma in the summer of 2022. I think shortly after, a company called Adobe made a $20 billion acquisition offer to buy the company, famously fell through. We don't have to get into that. Uh, what was going on as you were handling all that? And my main question is, how does it work when it comes to collecting the breakup fee? Do you just like email over a wire information, or do you get that in installments? I'm really curious how it works from the outside. Like, how does that work?
Yeah. Well, I mean, on the break fee point, yes, it is. It's at the end of the day, there's a legal agreement. You sign that legal agreement, it's binding, and if all of the things are checked, then money's owed in the right ways. And so, yeah. I mean, I remember getting a ping from someone on our accounting team being like, "Hey, the number hit, and here's a screenshot," and I was like, "Oh wow, that's a big number." Um, But yeah, no, jokes aside, it was an interesting sort of, experience to work through. I learned a ton. I think extremely highly of that Adobe team. I mean, they've built a world class business, and the executives there are just extremely bright and thoughtful. And for the whatever it was, 16 odd months that we spent together, I grew a lot of respect for what they put together and what they built. And I think one of the things that was true for us is we knew that the way that we were structuring this acquisition, we were going to continue to be Figma. There was excitement and around the brand and the vision and the direction that we were going within, and so we were able to communicate that transparently to our team. And so a lot of stuff didn't necessarily change. We kept our foot on the gas throughout, and deal or no deal, we had to continue to run. And coming out of that, we launched dev mode. We go through we continue to grow our team, and a year and a half later, we end up as a public business. And so I look back at the time fondly because I learned a lot. But I'm very much excited to have clarity today and the ability to control our own destiny right now.
Must have been a roller coaster, but I think it worked out pretty well for everyone. We only got a couple more minutes left. I just want to end with a couple lightning round questions. What was more stressful, the IPO week or your first earnings call?
IPO week.
Is there like a certain cadence that you have to practice for the earnings call? Because I feel like they just like purposely dull it down, like the tone, just so because they just want to get through it, like executives. Is that like on purpose, or is that just am I just crazy?
Yeah, I mean, it's one set of conversations that end up happening. You end up having, deeper callbacks, not just with the analysts, but a whole set of investors as well. So it's the beginning of a marathon in the call itself.
They should just be some sort of like podcast instead of earnings calls, like because you could just spruce it up a little bit, make it more exciting.
Yeah.
All right,
Well, we're
another
trying. We're
question.
trying. We'll take your feedback at any time. So take a look at what we did last time. We'd love any feedback you have.
I'll definitely email you. What do you think is the Figma's most underrated feature?
Oh, interesting. Um, Well, some of the ones that like my team uses quite a bit, as we use FigJam in the same way that you're describing to run all of our meetings, all of our cadences, and so and I'm someone who doesn't really do well with a blank canvas, and so being able to describe to we have like a basic AI tool that can go and create a template for you or design the experience that you want as you're kind of working through something. I find that extremely helpful. And then we have an ability to, summarize and categorize all the stickies and thoughts from the conversation. So that's always been really a really helpful tool for me.
Yeah, FigJam is awesome. I meant to ask you this just a second ago. Would you be in favor of moving to a semi-annual earnings reporting versus the quarterly that we have right now? I know the SEC is looking into it. Do you have any opinions on that?
I mean, I have no issues with that. There is a lot of work that goes through preparing for a quarterly earnings call. At the end of the day, it's about being able to continue to showcase progress to the investor community and be able to be transparent where possible. And so, I'm all for the right amount of transparency, but living on the side of preparing for it, there is a fair amount of work that goes into it.
Listen, man, if you guys move to a semi-annual podcast like us, we're gonna be in trouble. So I might be emailing you for a job if we move to semi-annual. Last question. Last question. We were chatting before the interview that you were from Toronto, Raptors fan. So if you're watching the video
There you
version,
go.
he has the famous shot of Kawhi Leonard in 2019, Game 7 against the 76ers. The Philly fans, please turn off the feed. Oh, are you a Blue Jays fan?
I am. I got until what, a couple more hours till game
Okay,
five. So
perfect, perfect.
yeah,
Well, good luck to the Blue Jays. And do you think the Raptors will make the playoffs this year?
they're looking good. I mean, have you watched
Okay,
a couple of the preseason games?
I
I
haven't
mean,
watched the
against.
preseason yet.
I don't know if I should care about it, but or you should care about it rather. But I think they're looking good. They're looking hot.
I mean, last couple years haven't been so great, but they got some good talent now. I'm a Rockets fan, so I'm super hyped for
Yep.
the upcoming season. So I can't wait. Praveer, thank you so much for your time. This was a fun conversation, and hopefully you can hop on again soon, and maybe we can talk about how to make the earnings call a little bit more lively.
Love it. This was a lot of fun. Good to see you.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Well, all right, guys. Hope you enjoyed that conversation with Figma CFO Praveer Melwani. You know, I'm going to be keeping my eye on Figma to see where they go now that some of the post-IPO hype has worn off. Let me know in the comments of what you guys thought about the interview, and if there was a question that you wish that I had asked in case we get Praveer back on in the future. Now, we've had some great guests come on the podcast recently, and that wouldn't be possible without you guys listening to the podcast and engaging with the podcast. So thank you guys so much for all the support. And if this is your first time listening, just an FYI, we post a new episode every day during the week, breaking down the stock market, crypto, and corporate drama. And with earnings season kicking into gear, it's a great time to subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already. Thank you guys again for listening, watching, and commenting. Shout out to Mike and Connor for all the work behind the scenes. And we'll see you guys back here on Monday.